Recorded.
Okay. Hey, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is, you all know, is Tom Clark, and I'm the president of the Navy League chapter here in Pittsburgh. And in conjunction with Huey Dietrich, the commander of the Requin base of the subvets also here in Pittsburgh, we would like to welcome you to our webinar featuring our guest speakers, Rear Admiral Dick Seif and Captain Jason Deichler. Before we begin the webinar, out of respect to our speakers and our shipmates who are participating, I would like to ask everyone to put themselves on mute in order to minimize extraneous background noise. Thank you very much. Today's webinar is going to be conducted in an interview format. Rob Conway, Pittsburgh's Council Vice President of Outreach, and Joey Campisi, former Requin base commander, will lead the interview process with respect to asking questions and clarifications. And after some brief opening remarks from both our guests, we'll ask as many of the questions received from you prior to today's event. In the unlikely event that we run out of questions before we run out of time, we'll open it up for additional questions from all of you. So now, without further ado, I have the honor to introduce Rear Admiral Seif and Captain Deichler. A native of Pittsburgh, Admiral Seif graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1992 with a Bachelor of Science in Marine Engineering. He also holds an MBA from the College of William & Mary's Mason School of Business. His assignments at sea include service aboard 5 nuclear fast attack submarines, including the USS Newport News, SSN 750, USS Oklahoma City, SSN 723, USS Houston, SSN 713, and he served as commanding officer of both the USS Buffalo, SSN 715, and the USS Jacksonville, SSN 699. First time we hit a number that I'm familiar with the submarines I've served on in the 600s. Ashore, he served as the military assistant to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations for Subgroup 7, Task Force 74 in Yokosuka, the Navy's National Director for Submarine and Nuclear Power Recruiting. He was a board member and XO of the Nuclear Propulsion Examining Board, affectionately known by many of us as the ORS, and flag aide to Commander Submarine Force U.S. Atlantic Fleet, Submarine Allied Command Atlantic. Most recently, he served as Commodore Submarine Squadron 1 and Chief of Staff to Commander Submarine Force U.S. Pacific Fleet. Currently, Rear Admiral Seif serves as Commander Undersea Warfighting Development Center in New London, Connecticut. His personal decorations include, but are not limited to, 2 Defense Superior Service Medals, 3 Legions of Merit Medals, 4 Meritorious Service Medals, a Joint Commendation Medal, 5 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals, and 3 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals. Admiral Seif, obviously it's a distinguished career. Thank you for your service and for joining us today. Now to Captain Deichler. Also a native of Pittsburgh, Captain Deichler received his commission to the NROTC program at Carnegie Mellon University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics. Captain Deichler also holds a Master of Science in Engineering Management from Old Dominion University. His assignments at sea were on board the USS West Virginia, SSBN 736, MSTS Daniel Webster, USS Springfield, SSN 761, USS Asheville, SSN 758, and as commanding officer of the USS Pittsburgh, SSN 720. Ashore, he served as an associate professor of naval science at the George Washington University in charge of instruction in weapons systems and naval engineering, as materials officer for Subgroup 2, Nuclear Officer Program and Submarine Officer Community Manager for OpNav N-133. And he's currently serving as the Director of Training at Naval Submarine School, Groton, Connecticut. His personal decorations include, but are not limited to, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 5 Navy Commendation Medals, 2 Navy Achievement Medals. Also a very distinguished career. Now, Admiral Seif and Captain Deichler, you have the floor.
All right, hey, thanks very much, Tom. I think I'm going to kick this off, then I'll turn it over to Jason because I know you'd probably rather hear from him. But hey, again, first off, I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to be able to talk with you today. I obviously wish I could be there in person. I know Tom and I tried to kind of set this up. We weren't quite sure what the COVID rules were going to be, but I promise you, I cannot wait to get out there in person and, hit Primanti Brothers and maybe catch a Pens game or a Steeler game with you. So I really look forward to that. Before we go on too much, I did want to, I guess, make just a few opening comments. I've got kind of about a 2-minute monologue about what UBC does, but I really would, I'd be remiss if I didn't just lead off and talk to you about Tom Clark. As some of you may know, Tom worked with my dad. My dad goes by Dick. I go by Rick. We have the same name. But he and my dad worked together at Westinghouse Nuclear for like 30 years. And as a kid growing up in the Berg there, I didn't really know much about the Navy or the Naval Academy, but I would go to the Pitt Navy game every year with my dad. And we'd sit next to this guy who was kind of louder than everybody and kind of having a good time. And I really got interested in the Navy, in the Naval Academy. And as I got older, I will tell you that between Jim Phelan, who I think a lot of you know, he's a sub-base member there. He was my neighbor in Murraysville. And then between Jim Phelan and Tom Clark, they really guided me and mentored me all the way through the Naval Academy application process, blue and gold officer process. But it goes beyond that. To be blunt, I didn't get into the Naval Academy out of high school. I needed a medical waiver that didn't come through. I wasn't as smart as Jason, so I couldn't go to Carnegie Mellon. I went to Virginia Tech for a year, and then frankly, Tom took me aside and convinced me to, have some tenacity and reapply, and I did, and kind of here I am. And so I cannot overstate the value and the importance of people like Tom guiding young 18, 19-year-old kids like me. And when people say thanks for my service to me, I'll repeat it right back to all of you. Thanks for what you do in the Navy League and the Sub League, and just keep paying that forward. And you never know the difference you can make in somebody's life and their career path. I really, frankly, the Navy is kind of my identity. It's my career. As you read my bio, it gets older. It gets longer as you get older, and I start to feel old when I think back to some of those commands. But I'm not really quite sure what I'd be doing or what my path would be if it wasn't for Tom and Jim Phelan. So again, thank you. Thanks for your support. And I just wanted to kind of make sure everybody kind of understood our connection there. All right. So I think the next thing I guess I want to talk about is, kind of what do we do at Undersea Warfighting Development Center? I'll bet you it's kind of hard with virtual. I love being in person because you can kind of read the room and get feedback. But I bet you if I asked for a show of hands, a lot of you wouldn't really know what I do at Undersea Warfighting Development Center. Is that like Navy Undersea Warfare Center in Newport? Is that the same thing? Is that sort of like the old Devron 12? What do those guys do? So I thought I'd just maybe explain that a little bit. So here's kind of the deal. About 6 years ago, all of the Navy realized that we needed dedicated teams working on warfighting tactics, combat tactics, the lethality of our forces, including the undersea. So we have Air Warfighting Development Center. That's like the Top Gun guys out at Fallon. We have I have a surface counterpart. I got like information warfare counterpart, but I'm the undersea tactics and combat readiness guy for the entire undersea enterprise. And that's way beyond submarines, frankly. It's the whole integrated multi-domain, space to the seafloor, how all that integrates and works together. So I've got a pretty good big team here in Groton, Connecticut. In fact, I'm looking out my window at the Thames River sunset. The Coast Guard Academy is right across the river from me there. So just a beautiful place to live. I got a big team in Norfolk. I got a big team in San Diego. Kind of what we do at UWDC, I'm kind of an integrator. I do all the warfighting tactics. My sort of job description is if it has to do with the lethality and combat readiness of the undersea enterprise, that's me. And so it's everything from the Arctic Submarine Lab to artificial intelligence, electronic warfare. I do all the training and certification for Carrier Strike Group, undersea warfare, all the theater watch floors like out in Japan and out in Italy, places like that. So you guys teed up some good questions, but I thought I'd give you that background. If there's any other questions, obviously we're limited by the unclassified forum here a little bit, but Jason and I can kind of, we won't give you hand signals, but we may be able to kind of answer questions as as best we can. Okay. And I think the other thing I'll just maybe talk to you about is just what the submarine force is all about these days. If I'm being totally honest, I will tell you that in my career, I'm very proud of a lot of the peacetime intelligence collection and peacetime centric missions that I've done as a CO and in other submarines. But I will tell you that I am 100% confident that your submarine force is pivoting to combat. Everything we do, and Jason's top dead center of that, the schoolhouse and all the things we're doing to work that. But the undersea enterprise recognizes this great power competition that we have adversaries out there that do not abide by the rules-based international order. They seek to disrupt that. They seek to redefine things and how they want them to be. And frankly, great power competition means things like we can't take sea control for granted. We can't take capacity and capability overmatch for granted like we used to. But that's really what we're all about in the undersea. A couple examples I'll just mention to get at that. First one, some of you may have heard of our aggressor squadron. If you haven't, it's exactly what it sounds like, sort of like our version of Top Gun. I have a whole team that works for me. Their full-time job, and they are out of breath. They are working hard, but their full-time job is to understand the adversary and to use that to inform our tactics and our training. We do a lot with the schoolhouses like that Jason runs. We do a program called, what's called Competition and Training. It's affectionately known as Fight Club, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We pit submarine versus submarine, fire control tracking party or watch team versus watch team, and who wins and who's vanquished. You have thinking adversaries going head-to-head in attack centers all around the country. And we do work all those tactics, that sort of thing. So the aggressor squadron, I've been told not to use the term fight club for whatever reason, but it's, competition and training, exactly what it sounds like, fostering that competitive spirit that just makes us better. I will tell you that our submarine force, our deployment prep periods and our mission periods are really, really pivoting to a combat focus. It's everything we do is baked into executing our combat readiness, rehearsing for combat, executing as much as we can, short notice weapons loads, short notice underways, things like that, to really get the force out there and be ready to operate. And so we're not learning on the fly if we really have to go to combat. And does that mean we want to fight? Of course not. What we're trying to do, or what we want to do, is maintain the strength of the undersea enterprise and maintain our asymmetric advantage to deter conflict and deter our adversaries. But then, should deterrence fails, we have a credible combat force that will go and take it to the enemy. So just a couple examples. I could talk all day about the stuff we're doing to prepare for combat. But I guess the last topic I wanted to address quickly in my monologue here is what our force commander has really chartered for us, and it's related to this combat pivot. But Vice Admiral Caudle, if any of you have met him or had a chance to interact with him, he authored something called Commander's Intent 3.0. And one of the best things about having him for a boss, and I think Jason would agree, he is crystal clear on commander's intent. He's very clear on what he needs the force to do, what he expects us to do. But I can boil this down to you in kind of three basic areas. The first thing that the undersea enterprise does is we enhance strategic deterrence. And if I'm being honest, we do a lot more than enhance it. Right now, as we speak, over 2/3 of the accountable nuclear warheads that our nation has reside in the submarine force. So the days of the triad, that's all really been skewed to the undersea, frankly. And frankly, if you start talking about survivable warheads, then it's really all of the survivable warheads. So we really have that as a primary mission still in the undersea, and that'll continue. I'll talk about Columbia. There's some questions about SSN construction, that kind of stuff. I'll talk about Columbia class in a minute. So that's one, is strategic deterrence. The second thing in Commander's Intent 3.0 that we're fully focused on is integrating combat power with the joint force. So the days that a lot of you on this VTC remember of submarines going out alone and unafraid, kind of going mano a mano with the adversary, that's still very, very important. But what's much more important is integrating with the joint force. That means space, cyber, Army, Air Force, 5th generation aircraft, being able to coordinate operations, share targeting, all that sort of thing. And then the third is enable all domain maneuver warfare. And again, that sounds like a war college term, but I'll tell you that what we're talking about is we will not cede any battle space. We will not cede a single blade of grass to the adversary. We want to operate from the Arctic to CENTCOM and everywhere in between. And we need to be able to communicate across domains. And again, sort of like related to that idea of the joint force, but being able to all domain maneuver warfare. We're a maneuver force, we're not a garrison force. We're not trying to defend the coastline of the United States. We're trying to protect global power, against global adversaries. And so this all domain maneuver warfare is just key to that. So Admiral Caudle has laid all that out. We have about 12 campaign plans to go with that. I'll tell you, I own about half a dozen of them, and we're just moving out on all these things, again, to prepare for combat. That doesn't mean we're not doing some of the things a lot of you remember from, kind of Cold War days, or kind of in the interim there. The sort of bread and butter missions and things of the submarine force are still there. But I would just think, if you get one thing from our discussion, we are pivoting everything we're doing toward this combat focus. So we're not surprised and trying to learn on the go, that we're ready to go, and we know what the movie looks like if we have to go to combat. So that's kind of my initial monologue. I could talk on those topics all day. I saw that between Tom and Huey, you guys teed up some fantastic questions, really thoughtful questions, and we'll maybe come back to those. But for now, I'll stop talking here. I'll go out to Jason because he's a lot better speaker than I am. Go ahead.
Thanks, Admiral. I'm not sure about that because I'm listening to the Admiral work with his staff and the Admiral pretty frequently on those things up at sub-school and the priorities that we talk about. Tom, thanks for having the Admiral and I. This is just a fantastic opportunity since we can't come home. I'm really glad. Hopefully you'll get to see some of you next week when I do come home. Captain Fishbeck, again, thank you for stopping in. Admiral Seif, if you didn't hear, Captain Fishbeck was actually my professor of naval science at Carnegie Mellon when I was a midshipman. So it's great to see Captain Fishbeck, and Carol Sawyer's out there too. Carol, thank you for attending with the old salts again. You're always stuck with the old salts when we come to this, Carol. So thank you again. Admiral Seif's kind of said it all, and you all know me, and I think Huey, our stories are better served for the barn in Iron City. So I'll save those stories for later, and we'll get right to the questions, and we can start asking some of the good ones that you guys had. They were doozies. It took me some research. You guys had me on my feet as always. So go ahead. I think Joe, you're going to be running it, right? So I'll turn it over to you, and we'll see how long you can keep this going, Joe.
Well, I have 4 questions here. Can everybody hear me all right? Is that all right? Okay. Yeah, we were presented with a couple questions on trying to determine the status of our fleet. Items like this, and we can get it straight from the horse's mouth. You can't believe anything you get from any other source, so it's always good to go right to the horse's mouth. The Admiral mentioned different situations. So the first question, and I don't know who it came from, but we have it here, was over the past 6 months in war simulation with China, the word isn't if we can win, it's how long before we lose. Does that mean, they have a more sustainable Navy, some more ships, more things, it takes us more to defeat them? But not knowing the scenario, we were just wondering how submarines are involved with that particular scenario. We'll try you, Admiral, first.
Yeah, and Jason, feel free to chime in here too, but I guess I'll take that one, or take the first crack at that. So, hey, the first thing I'll say is, don't always believe the word on the street or what you may see. Sometimes things have various motivations or, levels of credibility. And I'll just say that here's what I'll say on this topic is that, the submarine force is 100% fully integrated with joint, combatant commander operational plans to deter conflict, and then if necessary, if deterrence fails, to prevail in combat. And the way we get at that is we very frequently, we conduct exercises, live, virtual, constructive, or synthetic. We do war games, we do modeling and simulation, and we present the joint force, not just the submarine force, but we present the joint force with very challenging scenarios that are purposely really, kind of maybe put us at a disadvantage at the start, or have some constraints to get at kind of limiting factors and really kind of nug out as much as we can, as opposed to just repeating the same thing and kind of spiking the football that, hey, looks like our plan is sound. And, the whole idea is to really stress the planning cycle, stress decision-making, stress logistics, stress command and control of forces. So we learn as much as we can. I will tell you that we are really tight on that as a joint force. We do a lot of exercises that I think are extremely realistic, extremely challenging, in some cases unrealistically hard, I think. But, so I guess I'd just say, don't necessarily, I don't want you to have kind of a doom and gloom feel if you may have read something in an open press or something like that. I'm not really sure where some of that where that comes from. As far as how the undersea plays in these war games and how the undersea fits into like combatant commander O plans, I will just tell you this at the unclassified level. at the unclassified level. The Joint Force is very aware and will highly leverage stealth forces, especially in initial phases of combat. When I say stealth forces, I mean submarines, I mean Marines, and in small pockets of areas that can't be targeted. I mean 5th gen aircraft, 6th gen aircraft, and kind of everything in between. So our ability for those stealth forces to get access and then enable that overwhelming joint combat power to get into an area is what we think about and work on, pretty heavily. So I just say that, we have very challenging scenarios. We execute them a lot, and the submarine force plays a pretty preeminent role in a lot of those plans of war games. Okay, hopefully that kind of answers the question. And Jason, if you want to chime in there.
Yeah,
I feel better already.
Yeah, Joe, I think the only thing I would have to enhance what the Admiral said is that my job here as the director of training at Sub School is to really take what Admiral Seif and his staff and Sub 4 has designed, the O plans and some of those battle plans, and work with our commanding officers and their crews. So it's not the quantity that concerns me. I see a lot about China has a quantity. It's the quality, and the expectations from Sub 4 are very clear to our submarine captains, which is you will need to survive and you will need to win the war behind enemy lines. And we are there. We're there on normal deployments, just like you did when you were a submariner. And that's what really gives us the advantages. We're already in the environment and we're training our commanding officers. When you go out, it's not a matter of training for that peacetime. It's training for the wartime and being ready, because when it goes down, we need you to open the lanes to bring in the rest of our forces. It's a high expectation on us. And as Admiral Seif said, the logistical exercises we run are amazing. We just recently ran a couple, and just to test where we are, and we're actually moving weapons, we're moving submarines, we're getting some of those plans enacted. So I'm highly confident, as I always am. You all know that that's propaganda, and we're training our captains better and faster. Over.
Good. Who is the next one to want to present a question? Anybody?
No, it's Rob. Rob, yeah, Rob Conway.
Where's Rob?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Question I have is looking to that future. Can either of you comment on the role you see for unmanned underwater vehicles, particularly enhanced with artificial intelligence and a lot of intelligence capabilities themselves, and the kind of mission sets that they might try and execute or be used to employ?
Yeah, I can. Jason, you mind if I take a crack at that one first too?
Frank has his privileges.
No, I just, because this question is like right up my alley. My team at UWC, I own all the ConOp development for our whole family of undersea vehicles and undersea systems. And so a couple of things I think are really important to just lead off this whole discussion. And that is the most important thing. Again, if you get one thing out of the discussion of unmanned vehicles, there's a big difference between unmanned and autonomous.
Right.
And those things get cross-threaded all the time. And we deal a lot with that about, when you have an aircraft that's flying around, that's getting continuous GPS positioning and getting continuous command and control signal and streaming video back to a watch floor, that is a lot different than sending out an unmanned autonomous vehicle kind of with your fingers crossed a little bit that it's going to navigate safely, that it's not going to get caught in a trawler net, that it's going to kind of go do its mission and maybe deliver a payload and come back and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of for the broader audience. That doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's a physics problem, it's a technology problem, and we're working really hard at it. The other, I guess more broadly, I would say that unmanned vehicles, it fits into a broader topic of seabed and subsea warfare. And so when you start thinking about unmanned vehicles and what we might use them for and what the operations might be, think about, that's termed seabed warfare. And are there things that, we want vehicles to be able to do in places that maybe we don't have enough submarines to cover, or we might have other reasons not to send a submarine there. We may want to do, a lot of things that go to kind of a broad, the unclassed level, I just say, use your imagination, kind of a collage of operations we want them to do. As far as the vehicles themselves go, I'll tell you, we got the full spectrum. We have man-portable unmanned vehicles that a SEAL literally puts together in a lockout trunk and it swims out, does its mission, comes back, installs, and he grabs it and pulls it back in. We have everything from that all the way up to the XL UUV or the Orca, which some of you may have seen. That's a Boeing vehicle. It's like 86-inch diameter, so it's, you know, the size of your living room basically. And you can think about it's basically a truck, or, you know, you think about the payloads and things you could put, and that whole family of vehicles and that whole range spectrum. And you start bigger, you know, the bigger they are, the more payloads you can put on, maybe better sonars, better systems, more endurance, that kind of thing. The smaller ones a little more nimble. Smaller ones don't take up things like a torpedo room stow that you might want to put a heavyweight torpedo in and things like that. And so we're looking at the whole constellation there. And again, my team owns all the operational development of that and kind of how we're going to employ those in peacetime, and then if necessary, you know, in combat. And I think the last thing I'll just mention is, I think a lot of you know that a few years ago, we stood up an unmanned vehicle squadron up in Bangor, Washington. So we have a UUV Ron. Gary Montalvo is the Commodore of Devron 5, and UUV Ron works for him currently. We're about to transition that to its own major command. So there'll be an 06 major commander, you know, post-command guy, 06, who's in charge of UUV Ron, and he'll have a flotilla in various locations, because I just say it's a growing enterprise. Business is good. There's a ton of applications, and we just want to kind of elevate that whole employment and everything from, again, this kind of seabed or subsea warfare all the way up to, again, use your imagination about what we can use the vehicles for. So I'll stop there, and I'll go over to Jason if he wants to add to that.
No, Admiral, I don't have anything to add to the unmanned undersea vehicles. I would say that the question didn't include the unmanned aerial vehicles that we also can deploy from submarines. I don't know if you recently saw in the open source media, the Hawaii just did a logistical transfer. A couple of our other submarines out in the pack have done it, where they brought in the drones and they've flown in supplies. You know, I called Captain Sterling Jordan, or I actually texted him and said, what were you getting out there? He said, well, Halloween candy for now, Jason, but we're growing. And I do remember Admiral Mers, and when he was N97, he said, Jason, what's the one thing that I could put on your submarine? And I said, an unmanned aerial vehicle that can harass a helicopter when it's bothering me at periscope depth, sir. That's all I'm asking for. So I know we're making advances in that area as well. Over.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, hey, Joe, your turn.
This is carry it on a little bit with the conversation we're going now. The person here was hearing that French, Russians, and Chinese, and perhaps the Swedish, are making vast improvements in submarines, like what do they call those things? Lack of air propulsion, and they're pretty quiet. The Gotland have been running around with the Navy for about 10 or 15 years, causing all sorts of problems for us. So I just wondered, we've been known to outspend our closest competitor by about 10 to 1, and we're just wondering what kind of bang we're going to get for our buck here. I mean, I know we put out the finest submarines in the world, but somehow it always seems to wind up in the enemy's lap. You know, there's no research and development for pump jet propulsors and photonic mass, but they always wind up on a Russian or a Chinese submarine about a year after we put our stuff out there. So I was just wondering, how do we stay ahead of these guys? You know, we either sell it to them or they just steal it, and how good are they at, you know, using our equipment against us? I guess you want to try that one, Admiral.
Yeah,
we keep it up with them guys.
That's a harder question. I could let Jason take. Now, I could take a stab at that. Jason, I'll let you go first this time. I bet we'll probably overlap on this one too.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you know, first off, nuclear submarines will stay a nuclear fleet. I know there was a question out there about potentially going to air independent propulsion, which is the AIP, which is what you were talking with the Swedish Saab engine. The Chinese are running it. The Swedes are running it also. We won't transition to that, to my knowledge. We will maintain a nuclear force, and that will continue. The Columbia project is obviously our priority in replacing our aging SSBNs, and then we're already and have been working on the SSNX, which is the eventual replacement for the Virginia class, as we continue to put the 2 Virginia class submarines out per fiscal year. So with regard to the technology that comes on the Russians, the Chinese, the Swedish submarines, I will tell you, Joe, that, you know, Admiral Seif staff and the Agron puts out great products on what we know with regard to those forces. And none of their sensors seem to be similar to ours. None of their sensors seem to overlap with ours or are more capable than ours. So you may, again, part of the project for the Russians and the Chinese is propaganda. So you are going to see them tout some of the things they may or may not have. I am confident, though, that our technology continues to get better. We are getting bang for the buck. I will tell you, I see more and more upgrades and more fast, rapid insertion to our training and our technology and my trainers than I saw for all the time I was in training coming through and as a department head and a CO. So our technology is staying ahead as we continue. And I truly do not believe that the other submarine forces are getting ahead of us. I will offer, though, that when the Russians had the downturn in their Navy and some of their budgeting, they never stopped funding submarines. So they are a good competitor. That's the one program they understood would be good. So they are a near peer competitor. They continue to put out great submarines, but so do we. Admiral, over to you.
Yeah, just making sure I'm not on mute there, but yeah, Jason, that's a good kind of roll up there. There's a lot of layers to this question. You know, there's like layers about, you know, what do we really think of the adversary? What are their capabilities like? You know, when you start talking about Russia, you're mainly talking about, you know, kind of a near peer as far as kind of a capability of individual platform, but nowhere near us in terms of, you know, quantity or capacity. The one thing I will say about the Russians is they're really good at squeezing about as much operations as they possibly can out of a pretty darn lean force. And you know, to a casual observer, you might think that the Russian Navy is really bigger than it is based on their ability to kind of turn around quickly. But you know, eventually you kind of run the wheels off there. To Jason's point about, you know, the darkest days after the Berlin Wall fell and the end of the Cold War, the one program that the Russians continued to fund was their undersea programs. And, you know, now if you look at the Russian Navy, it's pretty small. They've got some pretty good public relations, like Jason said, but they consider submarines to be their capital warship. The submarine is their aircraft carrier. That's their way to kind of be a destabilizer, to impose cost on adversaries, to sort of, you know, kind of just be very Russian, I guess I'll put it that way. And on the other side, on China, the way we see that adversary is, you know, a couple things. One is, I think most of us, if we were going to stereotype a culture, the Chinese are sort of known as good imitators and good at kind of studying adversaries, kind of having a long view. And you see sort of the evolution of the Chinese military toward joint operations and kind of large Navy, that kind of thing. It really mirrors kind of what we did kind of in the 80s, 90s, I'll put it that way. If you think about, you know, there's only a few navies in the world that deploy ships and submarines for 6 months at a time. And, you know, China's one of those countries. So they are kind of, again, kind of following our model. They certainly have a lot of GDP growth and they have a lot of disposable income. And they're using that to grow their Navy. You know, if we're going combat ship to combat ship, you know, our Navy is smaller right now. Does that mean it's not as capable or less lethal? Of course not. You know, but from a capacity and their ability to make us kind of play zone defense, if you want to think of it that way, that's kind of the kind of challenge that they pose. I think to the question, though, if you think about like our undersea advantage is like a gap, and we're kind of up here and the adversary's down here, and man, they're working hard every single day and they're sneaky and they're clawing away and they're trying to whittle away at that. What are we doing to kind of maintain that advantage? I think that's really the gist of the question. And I'll just tell you that we're doing a lot. Everything from, you know, the investment strategy, and there's another question I can maybe talk about that a little bit, kind of what we're buying and what we're doing in the undersea, everything from the capabilities that we're fielding on ships. I mean, you're normally a student of naval or military history, like I bet everybody on this conference call is, and it, you know, clearly, you know, the victor in warfare is the one who can take new technology, turn it around quickly, and use it to their advantage. It's everything from, you know, balloons in the Civil War to, you know, whatever. Just pick something. And so that's, again, that's kind of top dead center of my job. That's the kind of stuff I think about when I'm driving to work is what experimentation, what can I do? how can I transition a new idea, a new concept to something that actually makes the warfighter more lethal and, you know, more survivable, that kind of thing. So we are working hard. We recognize we have this asymmetric advantage. It is our secret sauce in the Navy, is our undersea advantage, and it is a full-time effort to maintain that. And unfortunately, I can't give a lot of details on the unclassed net, but I'll just say I agree with the question, agree with the problem statement, and I agree. And just please understand we're working hard at it. Okay. I guess on the other, there was another layer to the question about kind of what are we doing? Do we have any advantages? What are we really better at? And I think I just have to add a couple of things. You know, first of all, our submarines, our P8s, our our helos, our DDGs with their, you know, our Surtash ships. We are the envy of the world. We are the most capable undersea platforms for finding and killing, you know, for ASW missions. It's undersea missions, which is delivering effects from the undersea, not just finding other submarines. It's, you know, everything seabed all the way to, you know, effects, you know, above the air-water interface. And then I guess the other thing I just really have to talk about is people. And maybe Jason may want to chime back in on this, but you know, I am fully confident in the initiative and the tenacity of our commanding officers. We've always relied on the initiative of the on-scene commander. That's what won World War II, and that is in our culture, and that is never going to change. And I'll also tell you that we have clearly, far and away, the best trained crews. I would put the average sonarman on USS Providence here on the waterfront against any other Navy's best they got. The training, the training pipeline, the culture of excellence, our ability to look introspectively and get better, to squeeze out every possible lesson learned of everything that didn't quite go right. That continues to set us apart. I guarantee for everybody who served on submarines and really, you know, more broadly a Navy, this isn't a submarine thing, this is a Navy thing. For all of us who've served, that's what we remember from our time in service. I don't remember my reactor plant, my torpedo tubes from my command tour. I remember all the great sailors that I just had eye-watering talent that I couldn't quite keep up with them. They made me better. Well, that's continuing in spades. And again, that's what Jason and his guys do, you know, at all their flagship training institutions here on the base. So thanks for that.
Yes. Bob, you want to try another question?
Yes, yeah. Okay, so we've touched on the equipment, the hardware quite a bit, and now we're kind of transitioning to sort of talking about the people. So both of you were in leadership positions as the submarine force welcomed women in to be tremendous assets. And it seems like from the outside perspective that the submarine force kind of didn't have some of the adoption problems that we saw in the surface Navy. Can either of you comment on what your experiences were with women joining the submarine force and how that's transitioned?
Yeah, I think, Bob, I can start off on that, and then Admiral Seif, he actually was the Commodore of one of our squadrons that was integrated, so I know he has some personal experience with that. I have not served on a submarine that has been integrated, but at N-133, when I was in the personnel world, we were an integral part of ensuring this program went. And if you remember back, it was Jay Donnelly, Admiral Donnelly, when he was sub 4, really pushed this program. And his first class that he brought in, our expectation was they would meet the SWO, the nuclear SWO, the surface warfare officer female retention rate of about 14%. And we blew that out of the water for retention. We were up with our first cohort of female submariners. That was about 22% of them retained a department head. And as of 2021, we have 10 of our female officers have already screened executive officer. So it's fantastic as we continue to integrate. I think what we really truly did is we targeted training with our crews. And of course, we had our issues along the way. I think we all are going to have issues as we integrate the ship, but we targeted those command triads and we ensured we picked the right command triads, and we integrated the boats with our officers, then our chiefs, then our enlisted. And as we went through the program, I will tell you, the talent was so good. When I was N-133, I was recruiting 26 females per year to be on submarine. That was nowhere near enough submarines based upon the talent we were seeing coming out of the academy and the ROTC units. Units like Virginia Tech, Carnegie Mellon, NC State, Duke, Harvard, MIT. These females coming out were just blowing the males out of the water. So we increased that to 80 female accessions, 80 accessions for officers. Now, to put that in perspective, we have about 405 ensigns we bring in a year that we commission into the submarine force. So to have 80 females, fantastic. We're starting our integration plan where we'll be bringing, we've already integrated Virginia class, we've integrated the SSGNs, we've integrated the SSBNs, and we will start this year with integration, our first female officer on a Seawolf class. We have 3 of our Seawolf classes remaining. So we will start that integration this year, and then we'll start to extend it to 688 class with the Cheyenne, the Columbia, the Columbus, and the Hartford being some of the first 4 boats that will be taking females on board. And then we'll continue to evaluate as we build. Columbia will be built completely with integration in mind. So there won't be any issues with that. And then we'll continue to evaluate. So I will tell you, it has only enhanced the strength of our force. I hope you're all following Kayla Barron. She was a submarine officer and she's now an astronaut. So that's the type of talent our force is recruiting. And Kayla will be going to space near the end of the year with NASA. It's just been a phenomenal program. And I'll turn it over to Admiral Seif because I know he has personal stories when he was Commodore. Admiral?
Yeah, hey, thanks. Hey, that's a great summary, Jason. I guess I'll just add a couple of things, and you know, maybe a couple of takeaways on this topic. I could maybe, if you kind of think about them or take them with you. The first thing is that integrating women, bringing women into the submarine force, is directly improving our combat readiness and our personnel readiness, or the capacity and the lethality of our undersea forces. I saw that firsthand. Again, I had 3 integrated cruise wardrooms in my squadron, Squadron 1 out in Pearl Harbor, Virginia class submarines. And I'll just be totally frank, those ships were outperforming the other boats in my squadron. And it was very noticeable to me that the level of professionalism on that submarine was just like a kind of a notch above. And I think to the credit of the whole crew and the sailors, and the gist of the question was, hey, why didn't you guys have some of the kind of the stumbles maybe that some other other communities had, that sort of thing. And I think Jason totally nailed it. It's just the caliber of the people and the expectations. We're a very tight-knit unit. The job is hard enough without dealing with kind of silly stuff and kind of shenanigans and that kind of thing. And I think the sailors really get it. I'll tell you that you have one stateroom that has 3 women in it. You have other staterooms that have men. When someone has to use the head or take a shower, they just flip a sign on the wardroom door. People like me wring our hands and clutch our pearls about how's this going to go. And it's like a nothing burger. There's like a shrug, like, what's wrong with you dinosaurs? That, and so frankly, I think we wish we would have done it sooner. As Tom read my bio there earlier, one of the things he mentioned, I used to be the national submarine and nuclear power recruiter for the entire Navy. And, I'd go to college campuses very frequently, and it was frustrating because there was extremely, 4.0 GPA nuclear engineering majors from, Penn State or Carnegie Mellon. And you would have to sort of say, hey, sorry, you can go to naval reactors, you can be a nuke school instructor, you can go on a surface ship, but you're sort of excluded. And I didn't have a very good explanation for that, frankly. And not only that, but it made my job harder. As we can open up the aperture, again, that's making us a better combat force, because now I can cast a wide net and bring in the top talent of the country and not just 50% of it, who maybe have other, kind of other options. Okay. And the other thing I'll just maybe add to Jason's point is that one of the concerns we have is that as you do this rollout in phases, that you can kind of limit the opportunities for females, because they may be limited to certain home ports or certain, platforms of ship. And so we've recognized that, and we're expanding the aperture. So as you interact, just like I led off with, where, Tom helped me when I was in high school, as you're interacting with, these really smart females who are thinking about the submarine force, please make sure they understand that we'll have every home port, every class of ship will be available to them in the next, couple of years. And that makes a big difference when your spouse is also in the military and they're in San Diego and you want to be co-located. That could be a deal breaker for somebody. But to be able to communicate that, I just talked to a bunch of ROTC kids the other day, and that was their very first question, was about this. What's this kind of longer term plan? Because I don't want to be limited to only Norfolk or only Hawaii or that sort of thing. And so we've recognized that. We're moving out. We're also integrating, the full crew, not just the officers, but officers and enlisted. Are there going to be occasional, maturity issues? Sure there are. But we have that on all male crews, right? We have all kinds of weird stuff that goes on from time to time. And it's just a leadership problem that we're solving. And so I really appreciate the question. I feel like this is actually a good topic. That's a really good story. And again, just it really is making us more lethal and more competitive. So thanks for the question.
Okay, Joe, you're up.
Okay, I have just one final question, and I think maybe we'll put it out to anybody else that may want to ask some questions. But we fought the Cold War, and the Russians were a pretty formidable enemy there, but they knew how to play the game. They'd zig and zag, and we'd play tag, and we'd get along. I'm worrying about these, whack jobs out there in the Persian Gulf. They got some old Russian kilo and wants to make a name for themselves on the way to meeting Allah. Do we have a good heads up on those characters? And could they just sneak some old diesel boat into a harbor somewhere and cause all kind of mayhem, or do we just be like the good old days? They leave and we leave with them. We're always tail them. I've always worried about that. I just wonder if we've kind of got that in our back pocket yet. How about you, Jason? You want
I can take I can take a little bit of your question there, Joe, and maintain it at the unclassified level. You heard Admiral Seif talk about China. You heard him talk about Russia. That's about where it stops. We have other competitors that we are concerned about, at least in the undersea domain. So you mentioned the Middle East, Iran. Of course, we are concerned with them. I think our concern has shifted a little bit away. I will give you the confidence that we have solid intelligence. We understand what is going on there, and we understand their capabilities. We keep an eye on them, and we continue to track. I think what you see more in the news is the harassment of the surface fleet, and we're keeping an eye on that. And we continue, as Admiral Seif said, all our captains, both subsurface and surface, are trained in lethality, and we're getting better, learning our lessons in that area. I will tell you, though, my focus remains China and Russia. And it's not that I'm not prepared for Iran or another competitor, but Iran is not a peer competitor. And we do continue to train to maintain our superiority. Admiral?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good roll up, Jason. Certainly, we kind of talked about, near peer or great power competitors, and that doesn't mean we stop paying attention to other bad actors and others who seek to, destabilize the international order. You could put North Korea in that category. So frankly, I think to Jason's point, I would just tell you that we have layers and very, very robust indication and warning, and good understanding of what adversary capabilities are and postures are. So I kind of leave it at that. If there's kind of a flare up in an area, it kind of gets back to the question about Swedish diesel submarines, that kind of stuff. The U.S. Navy is a global response force. We can reposition anywhere in the world at a time of our choosing, and mass firepower and integrated fires in an unprecedented way the world has never seen. And so with not a lot of notice, I will tell you we can flow the submarine force anywhere we need to, and that would include any bad actor, any kind of knucklehead behavior anywhere. Does that, our other adversaries are opportunistic? Maybe that creates opportunities for others to do things, that kind of stuff. We think about that kind of stuff as well. But bottom line is we're not ignoring those threats, and they're just not. It's kind of a JV level, but if necessary, we can bring what we need to bear. Okay.
All right. I don't have any more questions. I'd like to open it up to anybody else here that might have something they'd like to ask Captain Deichler.
No, John, I don't want to open it up yet. Back to Rob, because we got to go through.
I want to slip one more question in here, and it is about the Columbia class and the SSNs that we're going to be rolling out, the follow-on class there, SSN-X. What's kind of the overall mix of that? I know that there's a lot of consternation with the Navy shipbuilding budget, looking at the cost of Columbia. So can either one of you guys address that, the mix of the different types of boats coming out and how that shipbuilding budget looks for them?
Yeah, I think I can take that one. I'm the senior, I'm the only Navy flag officer in the state of Connecticut, and the only one here on the base. And so I do a lot of kind of distinguished visitor VIP engagements with electric boat and up to Quonset Point, if you remember that area. So I've got a lot of kind of firsthand sight picture of how this is going. The first thing, again, the takeaway for the group here, the Columbia class SSBN is the #1 acquisition priority of the entire Defense Department. And that's not a new, that's like, for the past couple of years. We started construction on the Columbia, the first of the new class, last fall. And that construction period is going to go for essentially most of this decade. And we're going to, again, roll out the rest of the class. So I think that, again, the Defense Department and the nation understands the national imperative to provide an at-sea strategic deterrent on time, as we have to start sunning down the Ohio class SSBNs or the Trident class. The weapon system, all that kind of goes with that. So, you're never safe there with different budgets and that kind of thing. But, when you have the #1 priority, it's a big price tag, but you're also buying 50 years of strategic deterrence, 50 years of assured peace. And so I'm kind of biased, but that's a bargain to me, as you talk about the price tag. On the SSN side, I will tell you that the combatant commanders requirements and the Secretary of Defense and OSD CAPE and Joint Staff, all of the different studies and all the different requirements put together, we've settled on the fact that we need an SSN force of about 66 submarines. And what that means, as we're sunning down the Los Angeles class, and we're squeezing out every bit of operations we can out of those submarines. And right now we've commissioned, I think it's 19 Virginias so far, 18 or 19, and counting. But what we need to do to build up to that 66 SSN force or build back up is we need to build 2 Virginias per year. And that's kind of the plan going forward. And so now you start to wring your hands. For anybody on the audience here who was here in Groton back in the 80s or late 80s, I will tell you that like 1986 or 87, good example. The year I graduated high school, Electric Boat commissioned or put in the water 6 Los Angeles class submarines and 1 SSBN. So they built 7 submarines in 1 calendar year. They just don't have that capacity. One, the complexity is different. The machine they're building is different. But to build back up to that Columbia plus 2 Virginias is a challenge. They are working really, really hard to grow that capacity while they don't sacrifice quality. They're hiring on order of 2,500 people a year to kind of ramp back up to that kind of workforce. You can't hear it here because I got my windows shut, but right down the river, I call it the Sound of Freedom. They're building a gigantic building. If you remember the old Electric Boat building, south of that was all water. Well, that's all reclaimed land now. There's about 200 pilings and like as much rebar as the rest of the state put together. They built this whole platform out of the water. And now they're building this big building where they're going to be able to put two Columbia class side by side being built. They'll come out into a floating dry dock that'll pivot out into the river and to be able to launch the submarines. This thing's like the size of an NFL stadium. I mean, it's just like massive. It's like Heinz Field, except kind of tacked on Electric Boat. So that's all going pretty well. On the SSN side, again, 2 per year. As far as the Virginia goes, right now we're building Block 3, Block 4 Virginias. There's about 7 boats under construction right now here at Electric Boat, more under construction, this teaming process with Huntington Ingalls, Newport News down in Norfolk. But the next phase will be what we call Block 5 Virginia, or what you may have heard as Virginia Payload Module. If you haven't heard of that, the Virginias now have these big tubes in the front that open up, and it's like a 6-pack of missiles that come out of this one big tube, like the size of like a Trident ballistic missile tube, except with like a 6-pack of weapons. Well, picture 4 more of those after the sale, kind of running center line on an SSN. So you add 90 feet to an attack submarine, and you add 40 more vertical payload tube weapons to launch everything from hypersonics to just use your imagination on the type of weapons that can come out of that. And that's coincides with, as we have to get rid of the first four Ohio class SSBNs, we converted SSGNs. They carry everywhere from 105 to 154 Tomahawks. As we have to sundown and decommission those ships, these Block 5 Virginias with the payload module kind of take their place, okay? And so that's Block 5. That's about 10 ships. And then you get into Block 6, we'll have some new other capabilities. And then you get into SSNX. And so this idea of SSNX is, hey, why can't we just keep building Virginia? Why can't you make Virginia kind of snazzier, make it go a little bit faster, that kind of thing? So the bottom line is you get to the point where with a given hull size and, you know, reactor plant and kind of form factor, you can only kind of get so much speed, stealth, and endurance out of a platform. And as you start to think to like 2035 and what our adversary is going to have, and how do we, again, back to the really good question about how do we maintain that delta and our advantage, this SSNX is the apex predator for the, you know, the second half of the century. And so if you're familiar with the Seawolf, you know, think about that type of speed, that type of hull diameter, that type of horizontal payload with like number of torpedo tubes and horizontal weapons, but then the stealth of, even better than the Virginia, and then that kind of endurance and things that come with the reactor plant, like we talked about earlier. So all that's in the works, all that's in the plan. That is a continuous, you know, the bottom line is we just don't have it. The defense budget's huge, but it's amazing when you start splitting it, how small each chunk of the pie is. I obviously am biased, and I'm a huge advocate for the undersea, but you know, that whole joint force and that whole multi-domain warfare, there's a lot of things like that we have to invest in, you know, kind of in parallel. But bottom line is, I'll just say it this way: the Defense Department and the nation recognizes the importance of undersea warfare, and you know, the value of the Columbia as the deterrent, and the value of the SSN as the apex predator that you know, ensures conventional deterrence. So I think we're pretty in a good position there, in a good, you know, good spot. But you know, those to me are some takeaways as you're having, you know, talking with kind of skeptics, or as you're kind of interacting with you know, with the people outside the lifelines. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Anybody else?
yeah, I tell you what, Joe, hold on a second. What I'd like to do is I have two quick questions that I have for the Admiral and the Captain. And then after that, we can open it up to the general public. To everybody else who's on board, if you have a question, if you go down to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there's an icon that says reactions. And if you open the reactions, there's an icon that says raise a hand. So if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll try to get to you. Now, Admiral and Captain, is that, you know, you addressed the training and readiness capabilities of submarine force, I thought, very well. And actually, you know, I'm very happy with what I heard. But the GAO report that came out, you know, hammered our brothers in the surface Navy pretty hard, you know, and I'm just wondering, you know, was that a wake up call, or did they get the message? And you know, you feel that the senior management of the Navy has is putting together a plan in going forward to get to the level and to get to that the submarine force has. And secondly, I'd be remiss to let this thing go, all right, without saying, can you address what's happened with COVID and with the impact of COVID, you know, in the last 18 months? And then we'll open it up to everybody else.
Yeah, Tom, I'll take the first part on the personnel side. I've read the GAO report for the surface warfare community. I'll tell you, one of the telling things in there is that they pointed out to the submarine force again that we're retaining it at a higher rate. And I do truly think, back to Admiral Seif's point, is that focus on lethality, and it's a focus on warfighting that our junior officers continue to enjoy. We just added new courses of instruction for our junior officers to really get out there and show their chops. For all of you that have come through, I know Captain Fishbeck, I've gone through the PNEO and the Prospective Nuclear Engineer Officer. We now have something very similar for the junior officers on warfighting. So their job satisfaction is fantastic. And you saw that in the GAO report, where your surface warfare, they weren't getting as much exposure to a submarine, or is important, and discussed with me, hopefully I'm not frozen here, but discussed with me the ability to lead right off the bat and getting to a submarine. And I think you see that, and we also talk to our junior officers, about semi-annually, we get them together. We have to understand what their desires are, what their needs are. So I am not as concerned as the surface warfare fleet is with their retention because of our mission set and the way that we utilize our junior officers. With regard to the training side of the house and the readiness piece that the GAO report discussed coming out of the collisions that we had, the Fitzgerald and it's slipping my mind, I believe McCain collisions that we had. So the GAO report discussed our readiness with regard to that. That directly drives into what I do as director of training. And I will tell you, one of the questions I saw was, how is it different from when the old salts, when Huey was back in the day and he was going through sub school? I will tell you it's the same, but it's different, right? So we put our basic enlisted through the same course of instruction that almost every one of our old submariners has seen, our damage control, and we get them out of that. And then we get them into their A schools. And the A schools is probably where you would see the significant difference. Lou has a great background up there in the radio room. My A school radio men are going right into that radio room. They're operating that equipment. They're operating it in the environments that we'd expect them to operate it on mission. So what we're providing to the boats in terms of a quality sailor for our FTs, our STs, our EMs, our ETs, we are providing them a young sailor coming out of A school that is able to get to the boat, rapidly qualify and contribute to the team, because as you know, we don't have any fat on a submarine. We have as much personnel as we need to get things done. So what we're providing from sub school, and I think where you would see the big difference than when you went through, is a sailor that really understands and talks the language when he gets on the deck plate. He understands fire control. He understands how to contribute in a warfighting area immediately upon reporting. So that really is where we stand with the personnel readiness and the training piece of that. I'll push it over to the Admiral to cover some of the other points of the question.
Yeah, hey, Jason, really good summary. On this topic, just to back up and I'll just say broadly, the Navy did a very rigorous, comprehensive review of the circumstances and the culture and all the contributing factors that led to those collisions on the Fitzgerald and the McCain. I will tell you, I've been forward deployed. I was an XO of a submarine in Guam. I was a CO of a submarine in Guam. So, my family and I have lived 5.5 years of our life in Guam. I've been stationed in Yokosuka, Japan, where those ships were. And so I personally, I understand what that's all about, and that there can be potentially perceptions of additional pressure on crews and that kind of thing. But I'll just tell you that I'm very confident that our comprehensive review really got to the why and the so what behind that. And then frankly, not just that, but the corrective actions that we put in place, are thorough and have been effective. And, this was never a surface Navy issue. This was a Navy issue. A lot of the same climate or, command pressure or prioritization, all those things that were kind of contributed, those are Navy-wide problems. It happened to manifest itself on board two surface ships, in pretty close proximity to each other. But, Jason and I are not naive enough to think that we, weren't susceptible to the exact same problems in our submarine force. But I say we've taken a really hard turn on that. I think that some of the comments and feedback from the GAO survey were probably past tense. Things that were sort of echoing from, officers' previous experience, and maybe those corrective actions hadn't been, visible to them. And I'm not downplaying that by any means. I mean, the feedback is always feedback and important. Again, one of the things, one of our secret sauces in the Navy and the submarine force is our ability to be introspective and to keep asking those questions why, and to be thorough about, getting to the bottom of problems and root causes. So again, I'm not, I guess I don't want to discount the GAO survey, and I don't want to have anybody think that, boy, am I glad I'm not a surface Navy person, but I'll just tell you that I'm a student of those corrective actions and those findings, having been a Commodore and a Chief of Staff out in the Pacific. And I'm very confident that we've taken a turn to correct them. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and to the Admiral's point, when he was Chief of Staff and Commodore, I will tell you there was a time prior to our change of home port where I, after reviewing, I did not feel as a commanding officer that our crew was ready. I flat out did not believe that I could get underway and do my Arctic certification and get safely to Bremerton in the 2 weeks that I was provided. And I stood up, I talked to Commodore Ute, I talked to Admiral Caldwell, I talked to Admiral Cottle directly. And that's the one thing as a submariner I've always found amazing is that I get to speak to power. As a captain, I got to speak to power. And I said, I will not do this. And they had the confidence in me to say, okay, we understand. What do you need? And as long as that request wasn't 4 more months, or I said, hey, I just need 7 more days. And they said, you got it. And there was never pushback on me. So it is from Admiral Seif's perspective as a Commodore and from my perspective as a commanding officer that it was happening. It was true and it was felt by the team. And all it took was my Commodore to say, Jason, you have 7 days. And the crew responded immediately and said, okay, they get it. The bosses get it. So it was great to see that empowerment, and it continues with our commanding officers. Over.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Hey, I for the second part of the question, the sort of COVID impacts. So I'm going to lead with the good news. And the good news is that the submarine force throughout all of COVID, we continue to deploy SSBNs on deterrent patrols. We continue to deploy SSNs on time and the highest state of readiness, the highest state of material readiness, personnel readiness. So bottom line is we did not miss a beat in the submarine force with our, meeting our strategic mission, deploying submarines forward deployed on time. So from a delivering combat power to the forward deployed combatant commander, mission accomplished, well done. That said, there's bills that are coming due. The first thing I will tell you that those boats we deployed, typically, I got 15 port visits as a commanding officer out of Guam. It's very common to get a lot of port visits in Westpac. I will tell you that the boats we deployed during COVID got 0 port visits, or if they did, they got things like Pier Liberty. The most extreme example, there's one boat here on the waterfront that did a 7-month deployment with a 97% op tempo. They got 5 days in port total. And those days were in Diego Garcia Pierside. They got Pier Liberty and DGAR. So if you've been to DGAR, it's pretty sketchy on a good day, right? So those when I say bills are coming due, I'll tell you what, not a lot of boats could pull that off. That kind of material management, that kind of personnel readiness, not having anybody take a knee and have to get medevaced, not having a single thing break, or when things do break, you fix it. In the near term, you feel really good and you're kind of high-fiving because, man, that's a resilient freaking crew down there. Those guys really kick butt and you celebrate and you're proud of it. But I'll tell you that starts to echo, and ultimately there's long-term fatigue that sets in. There can be mental health issues that set in. We're really focused hard on that, about managing mental health issues. We have things like embedded mental health on the waterfront, which some of you may know about, but that's a full-time occupation to kind of help folks through some of that. The other bills that are coming due are things like training in schools. Jason and his team had kind of a bulge in the hose for a while where we were just trying to not have COVID outbreaks. And so we went down to kind of bare minimum of what are the schools we really need. Some of these like pipeline schools, we kept those going, but some of the, kind of nice to have schools, we just said, hey, we'll stop doing those, that kind of stuff. And as we've come out of COVID, there's been this bulge in the hose, this bow wave that frankly, Jason and his guys have managed perfectly, with really 0 issues. But there's things like the bench strength of your crew. Typically when a boat deploys, you have an augment period, you send, you get new people out to the ship and they get experience. And, we're just trying to remove variables. So there's very few BSPs, very few people coming and going from submarines. And so you have your A team and then you come back from deployment and they all transfer, a lot of them transfer, and you got to kind of build back up. So we're watching, bench depth, material management, there's part shortages, things like that. Kind of the crew readiness and, schools and training, qualifications, all that is, again, I say it like those bills are coming due. We didn't dodge a bullet. We just kind of spread out the risk, I think. And now we're in that sort of, COVID's not in the rearview mirror, but it's starting to feel like it. And you kind of wonder, the analogy that my boss used was if you had kind of a jack in the box and you just press down on it, and all that tension and all that normal day-to-day stuff that sailors get to do to blow off steam and enjoy life kind of thing. And you kind of compressed all that. You can either let your hand off and the spring just kind of goes crazy, or you can kind of ease that back. That's kind of that's a good analogy. We're just trying to ease out of restrictions without having, a lot of personnel issues or, bad decisions or kind of bad sailor behavior, that kind of stuff. So I think Jason can chime in on this more because he lived this. We got like 1,500 students here, your young kids here on the base. And I thought about that every single day during the height of COVID. They were locked on the base. They couldn't leave. And you just think, what are these sailors doing besides playing video games in their barracks rooms? And I thought the guys, Jason and his chiefs just did a phenomenal job managing. So over to you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Admiral. I appreciate that. A lot of that credit goes to Captain Steve Ancliffe, the captain of sub school. Steve's topic every day with me, with Jason, how are the sailors doing? And Command Master Chief Aaron Lee, how are our sailors doing? What are they doing this weekend? And I will tell you, we pushed as hard as we could to keep all the base facilities open. And we brought in that embedded mental health. We have an outstanding chaplain corps up here at sub school that really kept our team going. And I took a look just today. I was actually looking across the board at how many drops we had, how many advertent behavioral issues, how many dropouts we had, and it was less than last year. So we're staying on the same level or better, which is amazing to see as we get these sailors through. I think one of the biggest issues we saw was the indoctrination of our sailors from Great Lakes, because Great Lakes had a hold up there, as Admiral Seif was talking about, because a lot of our sailors, if they got into a class or their indoctrination class, one of the sailors would get COVID, they'd all be quarantined, and then they'd go back and they would go back. And some of them had been rolled back for 5 months. But on that topic, our Submarine Learning Center commanding officer, Captain Jack Hadashell, he flew out to Great Lakes, talked to all of our submariners waiting to come to sub school, ensured them, hey, there is a place waiting for you. There are people waiting for you. And I think that's really the key, is we've maintained these sailors' identity with the submarine force and given them that resiliency through our Warrior Toughness program, that their identity lies with being a submariner and the pride in being a submariner, and continue to push that. It's good to see we're actually having our first command picnic for sub school this Friday out in the same place. Huey brought me a case of Iron City, I think right before I deployed. He brought it out there with Carol and we met. It's out at North Lake. So it's good to see all these things coming back, and we're starting to feel like a brotherhood of submariners again. But I can't say enough about the Chiefs and really what they did to keep it going here on the base. Over.
Okay, well, Admiral and Captain, thank you. You've done a great job so far. I've got 4 hands raised, and if we could prevail upon you for just a few more minutes, we will be in a rare position where we will make everybody happy. So I'm going to let those 4 guys ask their questions, and then we can wrap it up. Lou, you're on.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Admiral. Thanks, Captain. Question is that, you talked about all this great technology, all this great advancement, all this great personnel, and all the things that we're doing as a submarine force. A while back, we were up in Groton, and we got to go on the Boise. They were pierside for, I think, 3 years or something like that. It was a logistics issue with maintenance, getting into the shipyards, and all this great technology and everything. Things break. How is the Navy and how is the submarine force dealing with those budget issues and those abilities to get into a shipyard? I know that there was conversations for a while about private shipyards, and I think there was some back and forth on that. But how are we going to be able to maintain and not have another Boise or another Leonard P. Lipscomb where the motors, had to be pulled out, and we were a navigational beacon on, for Norfolk. How do we make sure those things aren't happening in the future, and so we can maintain our superiority? Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Jason, I'll take a stab at that. You can probably chime in here too. But hey, Lou, really, really good question. You just kind of went right to the heart of a big problem. In the undersea enterprise, we have, in the order of kind of low 50s, the number of attack submarines right now. And the way our maintenance model works, as I think a lot of you know, is you have kind of a 10-year maintenance cycle, or about every 10 for a Los Angeles class, and the Virginia class are a little bit farther out than this even. But for a Los Angeles class submarine, about every 10 years, you gotta, the boat kind of turns into a pumpkin, and you got to do a whole bunch of inspections, and you got to kind of recertify the hull, and there's all these, unrestricted operation, inspections and stuff you have to do. You put the boat in the dry dock for, a year and a half, something like that. Then you just hit a reset button. Now you're good for another 10 years. And you can extend that out. You can tweak it out another 12 months if with some waivers and that kind of stuff. But on any given snapshot moment, we should only have about 20% of the force in that condition at the most, really probably less than that. So like nominally about 10 boats or so should be in that kind of situation. The others should all be out operating, okay? And that gets back to why we need a big number to cover down on boat plans and that kind of stuff. We're way worse than that now. I'll just say we're almost, about, 80% above that number right now, and it's completely unsat. And it's worse than even something breaks. I mean, we all understand, occasionally something bad happens, something unknown, some big piece of gear just breaks. And now you got to, unexpectedly put a boat in a dry dock or do a whole bunch of work. But this is all stuff that's planned out for a decade. I mean, it's all like part of a sequence lockstep plan that should be manageable, right? So I'm just kind of repeating back the problem statement to you here. But the bottom line is our shipyard performance and our shipyard capacity has just not kept pace. And that's the public yards, and the private yards to some extent. On the public side, I can't tell you, this has the highest level attention of the Navy. This is not just a submarine issue. The Port Royal, when I just came from Pearl Harbor, the cruiser of the Port Royal spent, I think, 4 years in an availability in a dry dock in Pearl Harbor for the exact same kind of no money or no resources to kind of get the preventive maintenance done to kind of reset her. And so there's a lot that we're doing. And it is making a difference. There's levers that are being full. We have a whole system called performance to plan that has, the CNO's personal attention. And we're kind of laying out what are limiting factors, what are really the things we can do to kind of realize some turn and some benefit. And it is already making a difference. I know it doesn't feel great when you tell a boat that, hey, good news, you're already 2 years overdue, but we're going to get you out in 6 months. It's already sort of, it already doesn't feel very good. But at least I feel like we've at least got an exit strategy from the current situation, at least for boats like the Boise, but there's ones coming up behind her that are kind of just getting ready to start. We got boats on both coasts. So bottom line, we have to do better. We have expanded the resources and the capacity of the public yards. That's taken some time, and this performance to plan initiative is really getting at a lot of the again limiting factors. The other thing we're doing is trying to either use contractors or private shipyards to cover down on some of this gap. For example, we're doing here in Connecticut, USS Hartford is about to start a big overhaul, and they're going to do it at Electric Boat down here on the waterfront, as opposed to waiting idle for a year till they could find a spot for them in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I will tell you that Electric Boat is all in, and they really want this to be a success because they see it as growth potential, right? I will tell you that the local, the congressional and state leadership, one, it's the USS Hartford, so there's already interest in it. But, the idea that we want to get this done right, that's another avenue we're looking at. But it's going to take some time. There's this kind of kink in the hose right now, and it's not a great story. So not a really great answer for you. I'm just being honest with you. It's something we got to continue to work on. And, our sailors deserve better. No sailor joins the Navy to do tag outs and work controls in the shipyard for 3 years. If it was a preventable situation. I mean, new construction, boats do have to do those missions. Those are very, very important, but it just feels better if you have kind of a finish line that you're working toward, as opposed to the kind of open-ended. So really good question. Jason, you may want to chime in there. You might have some personal experience on this. So
I actually do, Admiral, and Carol, this will make you proud, as if you don't need to be more proud of your Pittsburgh sailors, but we got through Puget Sound, as most of you know, pretty quickly. One of the faster ones up in Puget Sound for an inactivation. And it really goes to the sailors and their desire and their motivation. But I'll tell you, Captain Diane Wolfson, she was commanding officer of Puget Sound, and she got it. And I'll tell you, Lou, we moved her over to the Navy, not the submarine force, moved her over to Norfolk Naval Shipyard to do the same thing. She was at Puget Sound for about 8 months. before she moved commands, because she did so well getting us through, fixing the Michigan, getting the carriers through, and really putting us high on the readiness level. So as you can see what the Admiral said, it's actually happening. The P2P and the efforts are, we fired the commanding officer at Norfolk Naval because he was not getting it done. And I am confident. I talked to Diane when she transferred, was really happy. She's a Pittsburgh alumni, Carol. She was actually one of our first EDOs when she was up in Portsmouth. So getting that personnel and getting the right leadership there, it's attracting attention more than I had seen in the past, getting the best leaders we can in the shipyard. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, Jeff, you're up. Jeff, you're going to have to unmute first.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Sorry. Hey, Tom, first I want to say thanks for letting me crash the party from all the way out here in San Diego. It was very informative, and it was great seeing old Pittsburgh friends at Requin base and the Navy League. Like I said, that helped me so much when I was there back in the mid-90s. It was great hearing the questions and answers, and I thank you, Admiral, and Jason for doing such a great job at answering some really great questions. I would like to extend an invitation to both of you, or either of you, if you're ever out in San Diego, especially if you're checking out the men and women of the Arctic Submarine Laboratory there, Admiral. We'd be more than happy to host you for a Naval Submarine League luncheon or something where we could hear some of these same good points that you've made. But great seeing all you guys. And again, thank you very much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, hey, Jeff, I'll definitely take you up on that. You know, I got my team there is on the Point Loma Annex, and then Arctic Sub Labs, over there kind of on the hill.
Right. I used to be the director.
Yeah. I get out there about once a quarter. I'll be out there actually next month for a week. I got the like the Arctic Review Group and Submarine Operations Group, that kind of stuff. So if I could shoot you a note, it'd be good to maybe get together. I could bring you. We do a social event, maybe bring you down for that, and we could swap some sea stories. It sounds great.
I'd love to meet up with those guys and gals again.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Terry, you're up.
Thank you, Admiral and Captain. I was on a project back about 15 years ago at the Pentagon trying to figure out how to get reserves activated for a little quicker for your needs and the rest of the Navy. I know there's a lot of dedicated, hardworking, well-educated sailors out there in the reserve community that are submarine sailors that could backfill one of your spots. If you had to take somebody off staff, put them on a boat to get underway, what do you do for the fill-in? How do you handle that? Is it any better than it was? I mean, everybody has their own little fiefdom, and they try to protect what they're doing and picking and choosing who they want to bring aboard. If there's a recall or an immediate need, they'll pull somebody that they've been in contact with rather than maybe picking the best and those that are willing to go. I know for Bosnia and Kosovo, I was called to active duty for a year, so I went. And in a very short notice, but there's a lot of people that are sitting there saying, I'll go. If you need me, I'll go, I'll volunteer. But beyond that, they're already trained. They know something about it. They may not know the newest, latest, and greatest technology, but maybe there's a way that we could put some of those guys through some type of training, say at the sub school for a 2-week period, a condensed version of latest and greatest technology. I'm just trying to figure out how, as a reserve, how do you get recalled when you're asking or volunteering to say, hey, I'm ready to go. I know there's a lot of reserves out there, raise their hand and say, hey, I'm ready to go. But when they're asked, they say, oh, well, I can't do that this week. So, they really have to sign on the dotted line and say, hey, if you need me, I'm ready to go.
Hey, yeah, Terry, I'll take part of that question quickly. So I will tell you, Admiral Seif touched on it, the P2P, the measures that we're taking to ensure that we keep our force manned is one of those topics. And what I needed at sub school to increase the throughput so that we could increase the manning, I needed more instructors. And we did exactly what you said. We reached out to the reserves. So we reached out to the inactive portion of the Navy and said, is there anyone out there that is still a submariner and can come instruct at sub school? And we're pulling about 10 of them to definitely come back for a period of time so that we can help them instruct. With regard to the other reservists coming back to the Navy, we just haven't seen the need for it yet. I'm sure, and Admiral Seif may be able to touch on this, our ability to recall those submariners in a time of war, that's absolutely part of our plan and necessary. But at this time, I don't have a need for them, with the exception of the specific recalls that we ask CMP to do. Over to you, Admiral, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So I'll just say it's a really good topic. I kind of led off with that Commander's Intent 3.0 and all the campaign plans we have to prepare for combat. I'll tell you, one of those whole campaign plans is about personnel readiness, and a big part of that is integrating the reserves. So you don't just kind of flip a switch and hope that people show up knowing what to do. You have kind of fully qualified people ready to man watch floors, ready to help us, in whatever capacity we need, whether it's maintenance or training or whatever. The current model that we have in the submarine for the undersea is we have a dedicated reserve unit that's assigned to different commands. Like, for example, I have a reserve detachment that's assigned to me in Groton. I have a separate reserve detachment that's assigned to me in San Diego. And I have a third detachment that's aligned or kind of split between me and Submarine Group 2 down in Norfolk. So the burden is on me to integrate those individuals. And, I talk with them pretty frequently. And frankly, it's a huge win because, just as an example, I have a whole artificial intelligence and machine learning directorate. We're doing a whole bunch. I didn't even talk about that, but we're doing a lot with information dominance and artificial intelligence, machine learning. Well, it turns out there's a lot of reservists that do that stuff for a living, and they have full-time jobs doing, machine learning and algorithms and kind of data management and data labeling and that kind of stuff. So, that kind of stuff's a huge win for us, just with our kind of peacetime lines of effort. And so that's kind of the burden on the commands to kind of share that. I have an OIC, like an 06 reservist who commands those different detachments, and we sync up very frequently. More broadly, I will tell you that Navy-wide, there has just been a full realignment of reserve billets to warfighting. So gone are the days of hey, I got so many reservists assigned to a unit, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do if you go to some heightened DEFCON or have to do some recall. We have gone and we have mapped individuals and individual billets to specific warfighting needs and capacity. For example, my reserve unit that works for me in Connecticut, I really don't have an operational warfighting hat. I don't have a watch floor where I have to command and control forces. So all my folks will then go and work for, the subland watch floor or down in Kings Bay and places like that. So we are looking hard at your point about, hey, if we have to go to combat, let's make sure we know who's going where ahead of time so we can qualify them and get them integrated. So we're not, it's not a pickup game. Your other point about how do we get visibility on the need for reservists, I think we rely on the fleet commanders and the TICOM N1s. Typically what happens is there'll be a major exercise coming up and there'll be sort of a call for personnel. I know when I was out at CTF 74 running operations out there, I was always just amazed by the reserve talent that would descend on Yokosuka between 7th Fleet and CTF 74 to provide support for exercises and forward operations in some cases. So overall, I think that's working pretty well. I guarantee there's anecdotes out there where somebody's a high-end person and we can't figure out how to crack the nut to get them out where they need to. So if there's work to do there, I'm happy to take that offline even, or, I can maybe follow up with you. But again, I think the model we're using right now is a line of combat, and I think we're pretty tight with working with our individual reserve units. Okay.
Thanks, Admiral.
Yeah.
Thanks, Admiral and
Chad?
Captain. I appreciate the comments. One of the things that I still worry about is that there are people within the command at the Pentagon that doesn't see that same vision, that there's highly dedicated operational people that you could take tomorrow morning, spend a couple days with them, and they'd learn and understand everything that they need to do for you. And they could go on board a boat. But there's also the clearance issue and all of that they don't keep up with. But there's got to be a way somehow to fix the lag so that you guys have what you need when the boat has to get underway. Whether you're pulling off a staff, putting somebody on a boat, pulling me out of wherever I'm sitting to fill that staff job.
Let me
Thanks
say
for
a couple
listening.
words, please, before we sign off.
Okay, Chad, let's finish up with Chad and then we'll get back to you, Carol, and that'll be it.
Thank
Oh,
you.
don't forget me.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you, Captain Jason. Great to see you guys. Back in the days, 60s and 70s, we had Squadron 10, which was at the State Pier, and it was a squadron of fast attacks. One of the reasons we understood that was if we went to war, we felt that they would drop the bridge over 95, and that would lock any boat into the sub base, so that we were out there to be able to be deployed quickly. Is that no concern of ours anymore? Thank you.
Admiral, you want to lead off on that one? I'm a Groton captain, but I'll let the Admiral lead off on that one.
Yeah, Jason's got more Groton experience than I do. I can see how, you know, that concept makes sense. There's plenty of other ports that have choke points in them that could be, you know, a limiting factor. I mean, Guam's like that. Opera Harbor kind of has one way in and out. It's really tight to get in there. Even in peacetime, there's a lot of current, and it wouldn't be that hard for an adversary to mine it or, you know, whatever. I would just say that to me, that the biggest difference between sort of that era and this era is our ability to understand, you know, indication and warning. That doesn't mean that you may not have a bad actor or a, you know, non-state sponsored actor who just wants to, you know, act of terror kind of stuff. But I think that our ability to anticipate things like that and maybe head them off and have that, you know, you think about just sort of the world we live in today and how connected it is, and our ability to kind of have kind of global coverage of kind of what's going on. I think our sense right now, you know, in a kind of a DEFCON, you know, kind of a peacetime status quo right now, is that we don't feel like there's a compelling need to do that. And you weigh that against other risks. If you start shifting submarine ports around and things like that, you can buy other risk, and you can, you know, end up doing some harm that you didn't intend. So, you know, things like that, you know, could be on the table if we really went to, you know, full on combat or some imminent threat like that. We would probably, what we do now is, frankly, we would sortie the fleet. You know, instead of having boats just be position places, we just, you know, again, that's back to the value of nuclear power. We have the endurance to, you know, to kind of load out, prepare for combat, execute our global response plan, and then be able to operate for, frankly, as long as we need to, you know, or, you know, at least, you know, 3-4 months, things like that. So I don't know, Jason, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Chad, first off, it's a great command qualification question that I'll be asking my future commanding officers. Hey, what do you do if the bridge blows up? We never thought about it in command, but I'll tell you, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of September 11th here, and we're planning for our submarine ball in honor of that. And Groton will be holding it on September 11th. And we go back, and I was talking to Captain Ancliffe and Master Chief Jackson, one of our new Master Chiefs on board Naval Submarine School. He's planning it. And he was asking about our memories. I will tell you, I was on the U.S. West Virginia in Kings Bay. 9/11 went down. I remember my Captain Paul Segrist pulling me in and saying to all of us, but I just speak from my perspective. Hey, Jason, how long before we get underway? And I said, I need 72 hours, sir. And he said, you got 48. And then we whittled it down to 24. And we got underway in 24 hours, from the middle of a refit period, which all of you have been in, to getting underway in 24 hours. So looking back on the pictures and what we did on 9/11 20 years ago in response to what happened with the World Trade Center, if something like that were to happen in Groton, the industrial base here, the first responders would mobilize so fast that I think within the time that they would have a path cleared, we have the best pilot in the world here, Rich Willett. He got me out of some hairy situations coming in and out of Groton. He always dared me to go under the bridge with the bridge still down. He said, Jason, you're a 688, you can make this happen. And I said, Rich, I like my career where it is. We're going to go ahead and get that bridge raised up, or I'm going to do circles. I have confidence he can get us out, Chad, and our industrial base would mobilize so fast to get us a pathway out. But the Admiral's point is right on, is it's sorting submarines and just being ready and being out at sea and available. Good question though, Chad. Thanks. Good to hear from you.
Thanks.
Over.
Okay, Carol, bring us home.
My turn. Thank you, thank you, Captain. Thank you, Admiral. It's sobering to be reminded of the importance of your work and everything that you're ready for. I especially love this time today when you talked about the people of the Navy. I'm a grandmother of a brand new Navy recruit who's at Great Lakes right now. 35 years of sponsoring Pittsburgh's submarine, and for me, it was always about the people. The technical part might be over my head. John Van Hyke, so wonderful to see you. I know you smashed a bottle on our boat to back me up when I was smashing that champagne bottle. And hello, John. I'm also good to see you in Pittsburgh. I especially really appreciated the comments that you made, Captain, about integrating the women into the submarine service. That was beautifully shared. And you mentioned a new ship name for Admiral Rickover when we started this conversation, or before it started officially. And I did do a double check. The widow of Admiral Rickover passed away from us just 3 weeks ago. So what a shame that she will miss this next event, because she always was the most outstanding sponsor of a Navy ship, and very, very special to all of us who are sponsors. And thanks, Tom, for including me in this time today. I miss going to Groton. I miss being on my submarine. I miss all the good people I've known over these years.
Well, we miss you too, Carol. We want to get you back in Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm always glad to come to Pittsburgh as soon as I'm ready to fly again.
All right. Hey, appreciate it. And Admiral and Captain, and on behalf of the members of the Navy League in Pittsburgh and the crew of the Requin base, we want to thank you for your time this evening. We deeply appreciate you being with us, as this was a great opportunity for us to meet with two fellow Pittsburgh natives who we deeply respect for your distinguished service to our country. You're truly our local heroes. As Jason knows from his time as CO of the Pittsburgh, we are proud of our city and we love to entertain. So we look forward to both of you coming back to visit us in person. In closing, please remember, pride runs deep. Go Navy.
Amen. All right. Hey, thanks, Tom, very much. I got just two things to leave you with. First is I got my Super Bowl IX mug here. You probably saw me drinking out of it. The bad news is that Jason and I are lamenting that we can't get Iron City beer here. So this just has water in it, full disclosure. But next time I see you, I'll put some Iron City in that. One thing I'll tell you is I got my terrible towel here with me. It's seen better days, but it's my my Mike Wagner autograph version. So my wife's dad, Joe Keenan, went to Carmel Catholic High School in downtown Chicago with Mike Wagner, and Mike Wagner allegedly took his football number, you know, whatever. But anyway, they're good friends, and he autographed. I got tons of this stuff from when my mom used to work at St. Anthony's School up in Oakmont. I get to meet all the Penguins and Steelers all the time. But I tell you, I just can't wait to get out there and see you guys. You know, once you're a Pittsburgher, it never leaves you. It's who you are. It's your identity. And I really miss it. Look forward to getting out there, and I'll buy the first round and put it in my Super Bowl IX mug. Okay.
Hey, Admiral and Jason, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, we hear you, Huey.
This is Huey Deichler, sir. I just want to say one thing to you two gentlemen. You guys are both super, and we're really honored from the submarine base here at the Requin to participate with you guys. And just a little information about the Admiral. He was the paper boy for Jim Phelan out in Murraysville when he was growing up. And there's only 2 papers delivered anymore, Thursdays and Sundays here, Admiral, so you know. And Jason, my commander from the VFW, is out in Seattle right now, and he emailed me and he showed me the pictures of our signs still hanging up there with all our signatures at the Horse and Cow. So I thought awesome. you get a kick out of that. And also, you two gentlemen, if you could get a hold of Carla Barron for me, I've asked a few other people, but they haven't come through. The reason I'm saying this because we're supporting the USS Idaho. Well, Kayla Barron is from Idaho, so I thought that would be good. We could tie her in with the with the submarine. And if she ever goes up there, she may have the USS Idaho up there in space with her. But with
Yeah,
that,
Huey, I need it. I need an XO to take your tasking down, but I'll get a hold. I'll get a hold of Kayla, and I'll work to get her contact information to you.
okay. And also, gentlemen, since Jason left us standing on the corner of Goose and Spruce here in Pittsburgh, we will be making plans to come up to Groton and having a few tipsters with you. And Jason, it wasn't one case of Iron City, it was 20 cases if you
It was-
remember.
They're holding out on me. He's holding out on me. He said he doesn't have any.
But it's been our honor from the submarine crew here in Pittsburgh. And we're here for your beck and call, Admiral and Jason. If you talk to Jason, he'll know you, he'll tell you exactly where we're coming from. We do mess cooking once in a while, and that's not an issue with us.
Just a real quick comment. Diesel sub I was on for a year actually went under the drawbridge in Groton.
Was that the Clamagore?
Huh?
Was that the Clamagore?
No. Seal.
Okay.
Yeah, the captain decided to flood down and we weren't going to wait. I was the OOD. I couldn't believe it. Should have the drawbridge tenders are waving. You can't do that.
Nuclear
You
submarine Greenling went under the bridge in the mid-70s. I was on the forward deck handling lines and stuff, but I couldn't believe the captain, brand new, did it. But it was a lower sail.
It's an amazing sight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm sure we could trade sea stories forever. So, hey, I just once again, and for both Huey and myself, I appreciate not only the Admiral and the Captain, for sticking with us, but for everybody else who was on board. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. All right, we are truly proud of you, Rick and Jason, and you are our hometown heroes, and thank you very much.
Okay, great. Hey, look forward to seeing you guys in person. And again, thanks for the opportunity.
Yep.
Roger that.
Sir.
Out from here.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.